Thank you for downloading from Digital Mindfulness. This is episode number 47. Hello and welcome to the show. My guest this week is the entrepreneur and productivity researcher Alanna Harvey. As the co-founder of the mobile app Flipped, Alanna has created the Toronto-based startup to focus on helping people become more productive and to take greater control over their smartphone habits. I hope you enjoy this episode with Alanna Harvey. So Alanna, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on and being a part of Digital Mindfulness. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you on. And I wonder if we can start by you just telling us a little bit more about Flipped, about your journey to starting it, and really what inspired you to build Flipped.
So I started about 2.5 years ago. It was the summer of 2014, and my partner, who also happens to be my boyfriend, my longtime boyfriend, and he's now my business partner, he had noticed his 13-year-old little brother, his behavior just changed so rapidly from the first time he received a cell phone compared to the way he was. He's a 13-year-old kid and he's sociable and outgoing. And then the second he receives his smartphone, his behavior just changed. And Christian, my partner, who he's much older than his little brother. He's about 10 years older than him. He didn't grow up that way. He grew up playing sports, very active lifestyle. And he was thinking, man, my 13-year-old little brother shouldn't be like this. It's frustrating how much his behavior really had changed. So he just thought, well, what if I could, block his phone like a remote control? How funny would that be, right? And so that's sort of how Flip started. Was that we thought of a parental control app that could remotely block someone else's phone. And I got into it not just because we're together, but because I also strongly believe that kids and honestly, everyone from children to teenagers to adults are so easily distracted by their phones, and it was a growing problem. And I wanted to get behind it. And so we started building it. We found a developer who joined our team, and we started building. And when we launched, what happened, surprisingly, was that the parental control side of the app, as much as the ability to block yourself from using your phone. And what it really took off with was students. And so we had sort of this product that we thought was going to be a parental control app becoming something that was much different than our initial idea. And if you think about it, much more necessary and important, because at the end of the day, you don't want a parent being able to control their kid. You want someone to improve their own behavior. And I'm so happy that that's where the app has gone. And it's also helped me sort of down this journey. I find I've really grown to understand the problem more. And I think it is more of a behavioral thing and learning habits, improving bad habits. So that's pretty much how we started. And that's where we are today.
So would you say then that level of digital distraction is something that you discovered in your own behavior?
So I've never been someone who is very easily distracted by technology. I actually was sort of known to be notoriously bad for responding to texts, and I was, one of the last people to get a smartphone. I just cared a lot less about technology, but I did have a relationship with it. I'm good with technology. It wasn't because I was a Luddite. I just preferred other things. I didn't put all of my focus and time into Instagram and Snapchat and those kinds of things. I was present on them, but it wasn't my whole life. But one thing that I did have a very close relationship with sort of watching human behavior was, at the time I was working at a restaurant, a very, very busy college bar. Coming in, they're there for like a friend's birthday, or they're there on a date, or, they're watching a game or something. And everyone is so distracted by their phones. And they're all around my age, maybe a little younger, maybe a little older, but it's everyone, every single person. And what really bothered me is that they weren't only rude to the person in front of them, but they would also be rude to their server. So they'd be rude to me, they ignore me, they ignore their entire experience. You see that reflecting in the way that they treat you, maybe even the way that they tip you, because they are sitting there completely unaware of the atmosphere of the experience. I actually wrote about this in a Medium post called "What's the Wi-Fi Password?" and had a lot of really interesting feedback. Some people disagreed. They're like, well, I want to be able to unwind after a long day, and that's how I do it. I'm thinking, but it's okay. But you also have to be conscious and give proper etiquette and be nice to people, and don't be rude, don't ignore people. And that's my biggest issue with it, is that people are so capable of ignoring the other person or the present moment, thinking that that's okay. So that was, my partner also at the time was working in a fine dining restaurant, and same exact thing. I'm working selling $100 bills, and he's working selling $1,000 bills, and he noticed exactly the same thing. So it's very interesting. We had sort of that view of it, because otherwise we wouldn't have been able to see it so pervasively, I think.
So we spoke about this briefly in the pre-interview, but you were saying about just the different demographics that are interested in Flipped, and why do you think it's so popular amongst students in particular?
I wish I knew. I think that students, maybe when they're younger, they look at behavior as though it's still something that can be changed, and maybe when you're older, you think, this is the way I've been, and it's harder to change it, perhaps. And then also students, they have the opportunity to try to be better. They're studying for exams, and they have goals, whereas maybe an older professional might think, this is all working for me. There isn't such an immediate action and reward type thing as there is in school, where you write a paper. If you're focused, your paper gets an A. If you're unfocused, you fail, right? And maybe in a professional setting, it's not quite as obvious, so they don't notice that they need to improve their behavior. And I also think that I'm 25, and I think that our demographic is more like 21 to 23, our target demographic. But then we also have a lot of older professionals that are discovering Flipped, and I think it is this younger demographic that are digital natives, grew up with it, thinking, I need a break. They're willing to admit that it's something that isn't healthy, and maybe adults with similar habits are not as willing to admit it. I was interviewed a couple months ago by a 15-year-old girl who, a research paper about addiction and why it's so pervasive in teenagers. And the whole paper, she interviewed me, and the whole paper, when she showed it to me, it's just amazing. It became this self-discovery, understanding her own relationship with technology. And I republished it on our blog, and it was just so insightful. So I think maybe younger people might, like I said, might be more willing to admit that there is an issue, because they've grown up with it and they're starting to question it. Whereas if it sort of became your life, you're like, well, I was under control before. So, I'm still in control, because I did grow up without technology. And those are the people who are saying, oh, the millennials, they have an unhealthy relationship with their technology. But then you look at someone who's, 50 and walking around a grocery store staring at their phone and bumping into people. It happens. I see it all the time, and they're not willing to admit that it's a problem.
And I think for me, I just would definitely second that, because to be that focused for that long is really tiring. Because for me, certainly when I was studying, using technology, yes, to complete the work that I needed to complete was important, but it was also a attractive distraction. So, going back to what everything we've been speaking about with people wanting to get more control over their interactions with technology, is that something that companies are also becoming interested in addition to the people that you've worked with?
Okay, so I do think that companies are and coming from like an enterprise perspective is going to be the voice that you hear before you hear individuals, and their willingness to admit that this is a problem. You look at France's government and their right to disconnect law, which, while it may not be something entirely enforceable if you look into it, it really was interesting how it started the conversation and how it got people talking about whether this is feasible and whether being able to disconnect in the evenings and on weekends is something that people are willing to do or want to do. And it's really interesting because I think that companies are starting to see the impact of productivity. Productivity in the workplace has been down since social media and just bringing personal technology into the workplace. They're saying that it's costing billions of dollars a year for, productivity in the US, for example, because of just digital distractions in the workplace. And people are admitting that they're going on social media while they should be working. And I think a big part of it is because it's available and because people get bored and they think that they need to fill something into the minutes of boredom at work. And I think that's a big problem because people feel like they need to show that they're doing something or they need to show that they're busy when, you know, a 20-minute break on Facebook, you could have left your desk and gone for a walk. And you know how much healthier that would be for your body and mind to leave your desk and walk around rather than take a break from the work that you're doing because you feel overwhelmed or you're bored and scrolling on Facebook. And then you just end up on discovering things that make you feel bad or make you feel, you start to get, social media causes all these different emotions that I think can obviously be very negative, especially when you're trying to be productive and focused. And you mentioned that back when you were studying, you would use technology as a distraction, because it was maybe fun and maybe I'm not, I don't know how long ago this was for you, but maybe it wasn't nearly as distracting as it is today. I'm the digital marketer for Flipped, and I get so distracted. Going and managing our Facebook page is like a war zone. You have to climb through all of the notifications that are trying to get to you, all the trending news that you should be reading. And it's a challenge. I can't even imagine, if you're someone who isn't conscious about it, how easily you could get distracted. And I think that workplaces indeed are going to be the first place where this conversation really starts to have action, and then it will hopefully trickle down into other areas of life.
It's interesting that you talk about that, about how the workplace basically being the first space that will recognise the importance of this, and just the effects it's having not only on staff morale but also on actual bottom line. But I'm wondering, have you had any feedback from any Flipped customers that the actual application has helped them to overcome any of the techno-related or cyber psychological stresses that people often talk about with things to do with self-esteem issues or elevated stress levels? I was wondering if you've had any feedback regarding that.
Yeah, well, we actually have done some really interesting testing of flipped in university classrooms with students. So we've asked them to flip off your phones for as much as you can for a whole week. We just ask a set of, I think at the end of our study, we had 135 participants. This was just one study. We've done several. And the students seeing their progress over the week was incredible, because at the beginning when we first introduced it, we're like, okay, basically you have to commit to not using your phones as much as you can for a whole week. Write down your goal, tell us how much you think you can do this. And the kids, their reaction is like, oh my god, this is like the worst thing ever, there's no way I can do this. And after a week, you see, I think we had one class that spent 1,000 hours off their phones in just a week, committed completely without any promise of any prize or any sort of reward. These kids just, participated because they wanted to see if they could do it. And the feedback was incredible. We had students say, this was my favorite, there's more to life than my phone. like just realizing something as simple as that, not as simple, as incredible as that, from something as simple as using flipped, where you just, it gives you this awareness of how often you use your phone and how easy it is to disconnect. And a lot of people don't ever turn off their phones, or they don't ever forget their phones at home or leave them behind. And using something like flipped is a really interesting way to try to use your phone less and to notice how much less you can use your phone, how easy it is. We've had students within these studies tell us that flipped help them with their relationships outside of school. So like with their families, they didn't, I don't know if you're familiar with the term phubbing, which means sort of ignoring the person in front of you for your phone, like favoring your phone over the person that you're with. And, we measured whether they did it before the study by interviewing someone who was close to them. And after the study, we noticed that it decreased by 20%. The people who did it a lot over the course of the week. And I think it's all because of awareness. So you have someone like me, a 25-year-old who goes into a classroom of students who aren't very much younger than me. And I say, hey guys, just try to use your phone less. It's really not that hard. Just try. Believe me, you can do it. And they all do it because they are asked by someone who says that it's possible. And they go, you know what, that wasn't so hard. And then it affects other areas of their lives. They go, okay, maybe I shouldn't be looking at my phone right now while I'm having a conversation with my mom. And it's really quite incredible that something as simple as flipped has been able to do that.
It's interesting because in 2008, Clay Shirky said that the problem that we face in society is not information overload, but filter failure. And I think that phrase has really stuck with me over the years. And I'm wondering, with regards to your work with Flipped and all of the feedback that you've had, is that something now that you agree with?
Oh, absolutely. I think that the problem is that we, like I said, if you don't have explicit consciousness of the problem, then you're just going to check that notification, or you're just going to even the notifications that really do bother me are things from Twitter where it's like this person just liked this photo and it has nothing to do with your life. And I'm not someone who would get drawn into that. But the fact that that's even a notification is like Twitter saying, hey, come look at me. And it's true. If people don't have that sort of conscious filter to be able to say, no, I don't need to look at that right now, or to even just turn off their notifications, or to uninstall that app that they find very distracting, then yeah, you're going to have a lot of trouble, and the filter just won't exist for you.
It's interesting because I know for me, whenever I get phubbed by someone, or when that used to happen, I would just get so annoyed with that particular person because it would seem as if they're taking their attention from me and whatever connection we had, and they would direct it straight to their phone. But over time, I think I've just become much more forgiving because it's very difficult to know actually what is important and what is not from the notifications on our phone or from the buzzing on our phone. So to a particular person, it could either be the most important message that they're ever going to receive, or it could just be something completely banal. And that is really annoying when I kind of reach my phone thinking it's something very important and it just turns out to be something completely, as I said, banal. But going on from the discussions I've had with other guests, this problem actually isn't just annoying, it could actually be a health hazard when we're talking about doctors or people who work in careers where lives are on the line. If their phones are buzzing constantly and they don't know what is important and what is not, that could have some very serious ramifications.
Well, okay, so I have a personal story. The other day, I went to the optometrist to get my eyes checked, and he had an important call come in. Well, also, he was receiving texts throughout the exam that I would notice. I would notice him, like it was on his desk, so it was face up, and so he could sort of glance over and see whether or not it was important. But then eventually he did answer the phone because he had an important call from his mechanic or something. And I'm thinking like, okay, but you have a secretary, like you have someone who can answer your calls for you. She's right out there. Like it's so strange. And I'm thinking this is rude, but it's also is how important is it? What type of, and it's strange. It's unusual. And but also what did bother me about that experience was his constant checking. Maybe not the answering of the phone. I actually appreciated that over the checking, but it's unprofessional and it's unnecessary.
So going back to the app itself, to Flipped, what were some of the challenges that you faced getting the word out and actually getting it noticed amongst people who are, as you were mentioning, addicted to their smartphones?
Well, the challenges that I guess we faced from the onset was that we have a small team and we're first-time entrepreneurs. So we have one developer from the beginning, and he did an amazing job, but it's a lot of work for one person. So we had a lot of iterations from the very first app, which if you were to look at it from the at the beginning to what it is now, it's gone through a significant transformation. And so I think our challenges at the beginning were sort of really understanding what we were. And like I said, we were a parental control app at first, and then we shifted to sort of this productivity for self plus the parental control app. And now we are really just productivity for self. And, it took a lot to get to this point finally. And also figuring out how to get people to want to buy in. So we have premium features, and of course we need to be a company that ultimately can make a little bit of money. And that we launched for 8 months, we were a completely free app, and that actually strategically wasn't bad because it allowed us to sort of figure out what is it that people really value that people could or would be willing to pay for. And it's been really interesting. We've discovered, who are very, devoted and very loyal users, and we hear from them all the time. And we do have hundreds of paying subscribers, and it's quite wonderful when you've made something that gets that kind of validation after years of work. But it was exactly that. It was years. Like it was a lot of work, and a lot of a lot of startups, they think they need to go from 0 to 1 million in a month, and it's not. I truly don't believe that it's the case. I think that you need to sort of carve out your niche, and then your niche will help you grow. So that was what we really nurtured our niche, and our niche has been what has helped us been discovered in other areas. And then also I think our team has had a lot of success with PR outreach, completely free PR outreach. Like we've been on some pretty serious media sites like Inc. and Mashable and TechCrunch, CBC News in Canada, and just like numerous media outlets that are writing about us periodically, and sometimes without even our pitching to them. So it's been a very interesting ride, and one, as I said, for first time entrepreneurs. It's been a wonderful learning experience for us, and we continue to go.
Cool, that's great. And I wonder if you can share with us a little bit. I know we spoke about this in the pre-interview, but where are people kind of engaging with Flip the most? Where are people downloading the most from? Because I think that it was really interesting that you and I were speaking about how this is slowly becoming a global phenomenon. People are really starting to think now about the relationships that they do have with their smartphone.
Well, one article that keeps coming back to our website is an Inc. article that says 5 apps to take control of your smartphone addiction. So it was published over a year ago, and we noticed that we continue to get traffic from there. And I tried it recently. If you Google the word smartphone addiction, it's one of the earlier articles that appears. So people are interested in looking for, ironic as it is, an app to help them with their smartphone addiction. Because yes, it's ironic, but it also makes sense. Like, this is where the problem is occurring. So what if our devices could work for us instead of against us? So I think that's what people are looking for. And then also we have significant word of mouth, because we don't do any advertising. So we're getting people sharing the app with their friends constantly. And we have people who we ask, how did you find out about us? And so, oh, well, I was with a group of people and we were all talking about it. So it's very interesting, because I think we're part of an interesting conversation. So people who are using the app are going to tell their friends that, hey, I'm trying this app out and it's helping me stay focused. And as this conversation grows, I think we're all sort of part of this conversation. We know it's going to get bigger, and it is, but it's sort of like, when is it really going to explode? And I think that all of the businesses and startups that are sort of in this space right now are really going to see the fruits of all of our efforts very, very soon.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it, that there is definitely a growing community of developers and psychologists and just all sorts of people working on this problem.
Yep. Yeah. Companies like Freedom and Off Time. There's Chris Flack from Unplug, just all these different companies that are talking about this. They're building technology, trying to support to help you be less distracted. And it's a very interesting industry. And I think it is still quite niche, but like I said, enterprise is really going to have a big interest in getting this to grow and be more mainstream.
Yeah, I remember reading years ago this Guardian article which brought up, it was lamenting that people were so distracted by their devices and that there was a new paradigm of computing called conscious computing. And one of the really amazing things that the article was talking about was that the way that kind of companies make money, the way that apps become popular, they're measured by the amount of time that people actually spend on them. And that's very different to the work that we're doing in this community, which is actually measuring the amount of quality time that people spend with that technology.
Yeah, well, I think that devices themselves obviously are the biggest part that need to change, because even developing something like Flipped, we run into issues that are completely just OS related. So the operating system won't let you do something that is completely necessary. It makes you more efficient. It's more effective. And yeah, and like you can't even build it because Apple won't let you. And the device itself, I think, is what needs to improve. Things like distracted driving really bother me, that phones don't already have something built in that it knows while you're driving and you can't use it. It's quite ridiculous, to be honest. And you have people like Tristan Harris who talks about this. And so I just think he it's amazing how he talks about design and UX, and how engineers need to think about helping us reclaim our focus rather than trying to steal it. And I think it will change, but unfortunately, it like you said, it's the business model of a lot of these companies is that they need eyeballs. They make money from advertising, and the more you're scrolling, the more money that they can make. So it's going to be an interesting conversation between what they care about, how people can focus, and like I said, reclaim their focus.
I think you're right. And I think also that we're at the beginning now of a really big conversation about actually how do we kind of make value from people interacting with digital devices and with computing in general. Should it really be about the amount of time that we spend on these devices, or the amount of quality time that they enable us to have?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, like, again, I mentioned how I have that Twitter notification that tells me that some random follower of mine just liked some random photo, and it's completely just asking me to use the app. That is all that it is. And I can't just switch off that notification. I have to switch off all of Twitter notifications. And so it's frustrating because these companies know exactly what they're trying to do. And I think about Flipped, and imagine if our app just randomly, pinged you in the middle of the day when you're doing something else. It's not fair. The person needs to make the decision that they want to use the app, rather than be pulled from what they're currently doing. So eventually, technology, I think will figure out what it needs to do, and people will start to be very frustrated. And I think, like I said, it'll come from an enterprise perspective first, because everyone's bringing their phones to work. And I think employers will start to go, okay, maybe we need to have something that says, hey, I'm at work right now. Like, filter all of my personal notifications and I'll get them at the end of the day. Like, it's as simple as that. Google can tell you your quickest way to get to work in the morning, but once you're at work, it doesn't acknowledge that you're there. Like, there's so many ways that technology could be doing this already, and I think eventually it will. We just need to continue this conversation.
And I think for me, I would love to see the feedback from information workers, especially when something is designed almost like intelligently designed to help information workers with their workflow, with their digital interactions in the workplace. I'd love to see that feedback of just how more productive it made them, how more creative it made them, and just in terms of their well-being, how they just were made to feel better at the work when the technology supported them rather than the other way around.
Yeah, I think back in the day when I was maybe 15 years old, and I had to get a hold of my mom while she was at work. I had to call her office and get her secretary on the phone, and then wait a minute before I can speak to her. Then we get into phones, and I can send her a text in the middle of her workday, and she'll respond right away. It's like, well, maybe not all the time. My mom is a very focused lady, but at the same time, it's just incredible that that's what has changed, is that we can and we do interrupt people throughout their day, no matter what they're doing, because it happens to be the time that we are available to speak to them. Someone needs to figure out in technology if there's this, sort of secretary that can be in there, like filtering out the messages throughout the day. The phones need to be able to do that, and that something important might go through, and then the things that are just, hey, check out this picture of what my cat is doing right now. It doesn't.
Is this then, would you say, Alanna, the future of Flipped? Is this the area in which the team is going in now?
Well, I can tell you right now what we're working on is actually really interesting. We are pursuing more of a student focus. So because we got such wonderful feedback from university students when we were doing our initial sort of research about how they feel when they've used something like Flipped, and noticing that they feel more focused and more productive and just better around their loved ones even, we decided that we would start targeting universities. And so we've actually, right now, we're working on a product that helps students stay focused in the classroom. So that's not something that you'll see very much of in the media because we aren't particularly promoting it right now. But it'll be really, really interesting in the fall. We have dozens of universities lined up to use it. And that's where I see right now the future, and for sure something similar in the office where you have you have Flipped in the office, sort of encouraging people, motivating them throughout the day to not get distracted by their smartphones.
Oh, right. So it's not just an on-off switch, but it's almost like a coach as well.
Yeah, a little bit. It sort of tracks your own progress. At any point in time, you can like give up, but at the same time, it's that sort of balance between, well, I have a goal, and do I go for it, or do I give up? And so, it's an interesting way to motivate people by giving them this idea that like, hey, this is easy, you can do it, just try. And so that's what we started off with, like I said, with students, and we're really excited to launch this product in the fall.
Okay, so I have to ask, do you personally live a single task lifestyle?
I really, really do. Sometimes I find like I said, I can get distracted when doing digital marketing is a very challenging thing to not get distracted doing when you're on Twitter and on Facebook. Like I said, it's very, very challenging, and I can get distracted. But elsewhere in my life, I am 100% the person who intentionally leaves her phone at home because I'm going out for dinner with friends. I don't go to the gym and I'm half texting, half working out. I very much practice what we preach. And I feel as though people around me in my life really respect that and almost act the same. And even though they may not have the same behavior, they act the same when they're around me. And I really, really appreciate that. So it shows that people are capable of changing. I can't imagine living any differently. In fact, I have a flip phone. I'm 25 and I have a flip phone. I do. I also have an iPhone, but it's only connected to Wi-Fi. So I have a flip phone for my calls and my texts, and then I leave my iPhone at home. And it has its moments where it's frustrating. I can't use
Uber. So how then would you recommend to people that they live in the same way that you do? What was the first thing that you would say to somebody who wanted to regain control over their lives with their digital devices?
Well, I think that starting with is definitely the first step. So realizing that you might have a problem. So if you're someone who thinks that you are, overindulging in your technology use, you're on it all the time, it's compromising your relationships with other people, you need to do something that brings your awareness to how often you're doing it, because otherwise you won't really recognize that it's as bad a problem as it is. And so using something like Flipped honestly does help you recognize that. You go and you flip off your phone for a couple of hours, and then when you go to reach for it, the flipped lock screen is there, and it's telling you, no, you made this decision an hour ago to not use your phone. Are you going to just give up, or will you continue on this course, right? And bringing that consciousness, bringing that awareness to this filter, like we talked about, and that I think is definitely the first step. And then once you have that awareness, I do think that it's all about finding the balance, being being able to, like I said, leave your phone in the other room while you sleep, or choose to read a book instead of scrolling on Facebook for half an hour. Just making conscious decisions that are going to be less about technology and more about finding other things to focus your time on.
So now that you've started to live this way, and this might be a really obvious question, but would you say that it's improved significantly the quality of your life?
It absolutely has. So ever since we began this journey of developing Flipped and sort of figuring out what our brand is and discovering that we're like this cross between productivity and mindfulness, I've been I've become very in tune with the problem, and I write about it very often. I blog about it a lot. I've also I found myself reading a lot more, reading books and craving to read more books. Just because I feel as though this is truly a problem that can be very easily fixed. If you're someone who has hobbies, or if you have other things to just focus your time on. And so I've become very interested in having hobbies and doing other things. And, most of my work day is behind a screen. And so at the end of the day, I don't want to continue consuming screens. I'm aware of that, and I don't want to. So I want to find other things to do. And it's quite interesting. I've seen a number of people my age lately, asking on social media and also face to face if they want to start a book club. So I feel like there's a lot of people who are starting to think, hey, maybe I need to start reading more. I need to pick up a new hobby instead of scrolling on Instagram all the time.
So, Alanna, what would you say in the digital age is the most important human quality, and how do we cultivate that?
I think that it's your ability to have a meaningful relationship with other people. And meaningful can mean anything, whether it's with your family, with your friends, or even with someone like some stranger. Just something that is there's this social aspect there, that you're polite, that there's etiquette, that there's respect. Because I find a lot of people are in their own little bubble, and they often forget to smile at someone walking down the street, or to say thank you, or to just be aware of the people around them. And humans crave connection. That is why we all are online in the first place. But real connection is face-to-face interaction. And I think that is such an important human quality that the digital age is sort of getting in the way of. And, you see it with, parents at the park and just scrolling on their phones while their kids are playing. And you see that human quality in the kids playing and interacting with each other, and the parents not, and it's absent there. And I think that is something that we can't lose, is our ability to relate to other people and to have meaningful and thoughtful interaction with people around us.
Great, thank you for that. Where can people find out more about you and your work?
So we have a website. It's flippedapp.co, FLIPD app.co. And from there, they can visit our blog, which has a lot of my writing. And then I also have a personal Medium page where I blog very regularly about this issue, and about productivity and balance and mindfulness and lifestyle habits. And you can follow me on Medium. It's just Alanna, Alanna. Yeah, that's pretty much it. We're you just Google Flipped, and we're probably at the top of the search results.
Alanna Harvey, it was great speaking to you and finding out all about Flipped and everything that you're doing. And I wish you the very best of luck with it. But thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was an awesome conversation.